My name is Nick Novello. I've been a Dallas officer since May 12, 1982. Prior to that, I served 10 years total in the military. And then I took the job with the police department thinking it was going to be on an interim basis. And it just turned out where I stayed here and became an old man. In August, I spoke before the Dallas City Council, and I made one statement that really was very pronounced. You know, it's been said that the first requisite to a free and open society is order. People like myself are here to maintain that order. But I'm here to tell you, you no longer have a viable policing function in Dallas, Texas. I believe not only are the citizens imperiled, but the business community. And so I would say to people, why should you give me any of your time to listen to what I have to say? Because quite frankly, if you live in Dallas or you have serious investment capital invested in the city of Dallas, you need to know that your lives, your well-being, and your investments are very much in peril today.
You're exposing truth that the city is keeping from everyone else.
Very much so. They're going to tell the public what they need to hear based on the psychodynamic that people will believe what they prefer to be true. So never mind that we have open gang warfare in South Dallas. Never mind we don't have a viable gang function in Dallas. The agenda that everything is subsumed under is that we can do the policing function in Dallas, Texas, with far less numbers than what the FBI suggests we ought to have. The FBI says that a city of 1.3 million requires 3 per thousand. It works out to about 3,900 officers. I understand that when Mayor Rawlings initially ran for the office of mayor, he committed to 3 per thousand. Now, today, we're a lot closer to what I'm hearing on the department. We're closer to 2,800, maybe even 2,700, than we are 3,100 or 3,200. And I heard it from a chief that where at one time the city said they had to have 3,700 officers, that number's now been dropped to 3,300. A very convenient manipulation because now they can say we're only so many hundred short. Remember, they just jettisoned, they changed the equation of their own volition, of their own doing. They've changed that equation. So they can actually, in a very disingenuous fashion, say we're only 200 or 300 short. We're closer to 1,200 short. It's so important to understand that because somebody's wrong. Either I'm wrong or the city's wrong. There's no in between here. And to give you an example, the gang unit. We don't have a gang unit in Dallas. Oh, we have a few officers assigned to the gang unit. I believe Fort Worth has 29 or 30, and other area departments keep a comparable amount of officers there. They gather intelligence. They have detectives that work cases and what have you. In Dallas, we're not getting any intelligence gathered right now. We're not doing the job that a gang unit needs to do, especially with the gang problems we're having in South Dallas. Now, at Central, where once we had 20 detectives, we have 4. Where the hit and run department there at Central once had, I think, close to 20. They have 4. The motor jocks in Dallas used to be 40 or 45 motor jocks. They're about. They have 12. Homicide is reduced. Narcotics is reduced. The very patrol function, the meat of the department has been greatly reduced. Those of us who remain here now, today, are going to be ridden into the ground. So the mindset, and I don't understand it, but that's the way it is, those who run the department really believe we, the patrol function, came into the world, saddled and bridled to be ridden. And they came into the world, booted and spurred to do the riding. So the inverse relationship between stress and the job has become very real. We have very few officers, they're micromanaged. And again, you have to remember, the justification for that is we need to create the impression, the perception that we can in fact get the job done with 3,000 or less police. It's so important because should that fail, then the mayor will have a problem. You deliberately denuded us, saying you had a new paradigm that's cost us lives, property damage, businesses to leave the city, businesses not wanting to come to a city that's so overrun with crime problems. That's where we are. We're not gathering intelligence on the various gangs that are operative in Dallas right now. We're not tying anything in terms of where they are, how they're generating funds, what they're doing. We don't have the manpower to get the job done. So in lieu of getting the job done, we sell the city a bill of goods that we are in fact getting the job done. But I know, and I think anyone who's going to be totally blunt and honest about this, that the citizens of Dallas, especially minority communities, are not getting any real police service. And then the business communities today in Dallas that are investing hundreds of millions of dollars and that are dependent upon a clientele coming out to frequent those businesses, if it's established that the city is unsafe, they're going to lose a lot of money. A lot of money. And the mayor's priority to build a park that may cost $700 million to $1 billion in the Trinity River bottoms, who's going to patrol that? Who's going to keep that safe? You know, I have to make one point that the chief says the vice function, at least for the time being, will be taken over by patrol. We can't even provide any proactive policing now. How are we to do any type of work that would go along the lines of dealing with prostitution and gambling? Those are time-intensive endeavors. We don't have the manpower.
Is pay a big driving force too in not just morale, but in obtaining fresh officers to make things safer even?
Well, in my estimation, when every area department offers starting salaries from $55,000 to $63,000, and the Dallas Police Department offers $46,000 to start. This is off a chart that was published last year, so it may have changed. But the fact of the matter is, yeah, when the city manager says we're going to judiciously and prudently work towards increasing the numbers, I don't understand how you can anticipate hiring anyone when you're $10,000 to $15,000 less in starting salary.
It seems outrageous. Is there a flight of officers leaving the department, going to the suburbs because of the pay disparity?
We've lost a lot of officers. We've had some of our best cherry-picked by Fort Worth and Frisco and Plano, and they're gone. You really can't blame them. You can't blame these guys for leaving a department that palpably has shown no concern for them, none. I don't know, I'm very careful how I phrase this, but the mayor obviously has an animus for us because he's deliberately worked towards undermining us in every instance. And when you use that hate language that he used,
they have taken the citizens out in an alley and just pistol whipped them. I mean, what they are doing is exacerbating the mistakes that have been made for the last 15 years, shackling the wrist of these taxpayers for the next, till the second coming, okay?
Well, if we're 1,200 officers short and vastly underpaid, what's he talking about? And where are the monies going? Because Dallas is awash in new projects. Dallas is awash in great sums of money coming into the city. And yet the mayor portrays a city of 1.3 million as being on the verge of bankruptcy. I would suggest that someone with the wherewithal to do a forensic analysis of where the monies are right now, how much is coming in, where those monies have been committed to. Because I think that the mayor really believes that policing can be done with a warm body in a uniform. So he knows the cost of running the Dallas Police Department. He simply has no clue about the value of running this department, the value of the person who's taken an oath to die doing the job. That he has no clue about.
So with the city government being antagonist with the police department, does this chief even stand a chance, or do you think she was brought in with an agenda?
Yeah, I think, Mike, she stands a real chance at doing what she was brought in to do. And that's to do the mayor's agenda. That's what she was brought in to do. She was not brought in to provide any out-of-the-box solutions. I don't know her. I've not met her. I don't speak with rancor about her. I don't know her. But everyone knows that the only criteria she had to meet was that she was aboard with the mayor and his agenda to remake the department. And as we remake the department today, in real time, there is real fallout in the form of citizens not receiving police service, citizens being hurt, some being killed, and are not responding. As a beat cop, and I'm there every day, I can tell you this is so important to establish the point that we're doing mop-up work. We're not providing real-time police response to situations that are, in many cases, very dangerous.
So you say we're around 2,700 officers, and we should be 3,900 officers. What does this look like? What is the state of the police department? Let's just use a little smaller example. Say at your substation, what are we looking at there? What are we putting on the street on a day-to-day basis?
Well, many times I work 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and after the 7 a.m. detail, there may be 7 of us there. After detail and special assignments are given out, we have 2 or 3 elements for call answering. Never mind the amount of calls being held, we have 2 or 3 officers for call answering, period.
So the police function, as far as patrol, is responding to calls for police service, isn't that correct?
Well, that's the way it ought to be.
Well, then you have 3 officers, if you're telling me 3 officers responding to that need. Is that even possible?
No, it's not possible. That's why I want to say something here that may sound incendiary. What we have here is a perception that's being massaged into existence that we can get the job done. It's strictly a perception. The actuality is we can't get the job done. We're not getting the job done. What I see is that we're going through an experiment. We're trying to recreate the department in the mayor's image. What he won't speak to is the fact that we're having tremendous crime and tremendous violence occurring on the streets of Dallas. All of that is suppressed information. We're being deliberately dismantled. I believe that the mayor has an agenda that very few people know about. I certainly don't know exactly what it is. I don't want to ascribe a mindset to the man. But we know that the department's being dismantled. And all along as it's being dismantled and crime is getting out of hand, it's important for the department to continue to make the pronouncements, everything is copacetic, everything's okay. Crime, in fact, is going down. So we see numbers being manipulated, and what we're really seeing manipulated is the citizens of the city, being fed one falsehood after another. But I would submit to you, the business community is starting to become aware that if you don't have a fully functioning police department, you don't have a safe environment. Imagine a scenario, someone invests a couple of $100 million in an entertainment venue coupled with condominiums and businesses, but it's really fashionable, very aesthetic. And their clientele begins to get robbed and beaten. They're financially culpable to some degree. So my question is, to what degree is the city financially culpable to that business entity for failing to maintain a viable police presence? And that's where we really are in Dallas, and people don't want to speak to that. And I want to tell you, one of the reasons that I speak to it, Mike, and I really don't care where the chips fall from this point, because I'm just one guy. But everything happening around me is far greater than the one guy. I see people who are victims, I see danger, and I see lack of police response, and then I see lies coming from the city of Dallas, from the mayor and the city manager's office, all the way down to the public information office, that everything is okay when it's not. It's simply not okay. Should we have an incident in Dallas, much like they had in Las Vegas or Baltimore, one of these major cities where you have riots or you have mass shootings, we won't be able to field an adequate police response to that. But the fact of the matter is, what we're not getting in Dallas, Texas right now is real-time police response to emergencies. Oh, you get it here and there, but you don't have the manpower. I understand nationally a police department puts between 60 and 65% of its workforce in the field, in the patrol function. I understand Dallas is just under 50%. So it begs the question about manpower allocation. We can do cleanup work, we can respond to different scenarios. We cannot be proactive in Dallas. We can't sit down and work a logistical plan where we can be proactive and use some really good resources to address some ongoing issues. All we can do is, much like a Keystone Cop, run to that location in the aftermath. And it's really tragic, but it does lend itself to keeping with, again, the perception. We're there, we care, we're here now, we've saturated the area. And the public, by and large, might buy into this. Really, I want to make a point. I'll probably alienate half of my listening audience, but we're all, me included, we're all being played by the system. Because all they know is that they have to tell us certain things, and we all buy into it. We all bite into that apple. You know, let me say this. I was investigated by Internal Affairs because I released a piece to the public. I was so incensed on this particular morning.
Well, what do we have here, man? This is sad. Look at this. Motorcycle down, no elements available. One supervisor responding right now, no elements available. What do you think, City Manager Broadnax? We don't need anybody else. We're okay with what we've got.
Mike, that day, myself and my partner were the only 2 officers available for calls in Central Dallas. 2 officers available.
For the entire division?
For the entire division.
How can the officers feel safe doing their job with 2 officers in an entire division? Was there any compensation? Did the supervisors tell you to just work together, or what happened?
Well, no, we were in the same car together that particular day, but it was still so upsetting because you could get what they call a CIT call, which requires 4 officers and a supervisor. You don't have the 4 officers there. You could get a call where you could get hurt and be on the street and know where are you going to get help from. I said these things before the Dallas City Council. If we're going to see any changes to this, Mike, I mean this, the only way this will happen is the business community will confront the mayor's office and say, what are you doing and why? I think the mayor's looking to take full control of the public service, or should I say first responders, inclusive of the pension. It'll probably really make for a problem for those already retired who served with great distinction and risked their lives. They may very well see their pensions impacted much like Detroit's was. Which begs another question. The chief that came in from Detroit, her entire tenure in Detroit was done under the auspices of a consent decree. So she is used to this atmosphere that we're in now in Dallas. So are we heading that way? And if we are, I would suggest to the business community, you guys need to get some answers from downtown. And don't assess the response to your questions by what is said. Take a hard look at what's being done. Whoever's in a position to vet what's happening in Dallas needs to come in independently and start assessing where the monies that we're coming or getting in, all these monies, where they're going, how they're prioritized, how those monies are spent. Because I think you remember the scandal some years ago that the city could not account for millions of dollars in HUD money. No paper trail, nothing. And yet we don't read of any fallout from that.
Isn't it true that you lodged a complaint against chiefs that were criminally negligent?
Yeah, this is true. I went to the FBI on a sitting chief, charged that chief with obstruction of justice and witness tampering. Nothing ever came of it, nothing. I went to public integrity and nothing ever came of it. And that was expected. You know, when I speak, Mike, much like my speaking here, I speak hopefully for 2 reasons. To provoke a hard virgin look at what's there by the citizens in the business community, number 1, and I also speak to establish culpability. Because when this stuff really gets bad later, no one in city government or with the police department can say, gee, we didn't know. Yeah, you know. You know. And so the question comes, what did you do once you knew? Because everything I'm saying, I want to say this very plainly, the city ought to send a representative from the mayor's office or the city manager's office to rebut everything I'm saying. If I'm wrong and I've conjured a lot of this up, I should be sanctioned. I should lose my job. And if what I've done is illegal, I should be put in the county jail for it. I don't say that lightly. But again, I'm tired of seeing young people criminalized. I'm tired of seeing older folks along with the young people victims in our culture because we don't have a viable policing function that polices and is transparent to itself in terms of showing the citizens you can trust us and we'll tell you why. I think we're all tired of hearing police officials make the comments that integrity means everything to us, and they are contentless declarations. And that's what we've got going on here. Oh, integrity and transparency mean the world to us. But go downtown and put an open records request in and see if you get that request honored. They're going to go ahead and go through the state attorney general's office to see if they can quash that. Why would they have anything to hide? Because they know they don't tell the truth. What they're doing is just manufacturing perception for public consumption. From the time that a call is received, obviously the city doesn't consider it a call holding until it's actually dispatched, and then from the time the officer gets it to the time he shows up to the residence, that's their time. But we know if someone calls the police at 2 a.m. and we don't show up till 5:30 a.m., that's 3.5 hours, and that's what's happening. Now, interestingly, last week I noticed the call come in priority 1. The highest priority, priority 1. 8 minutes later, that call was still holding. They had to do something with it. So it's conveniently morphed into a priority 2 call. There's no longer the great amount of stress to get it out as a priority 1, but it's now priority 2. So the question comes, how much of that is going on? I submit to you, I don't have the numbers, but I submit to you it's quite a bit. That we're changing the priorities on these calls, again, to mitigate or euphemize the fact that we can't respond to them.
So based on what you're saying, and very clearly so, we're seeing manipulation of these figures to keep the truth from the public about real response time to their serious calls, along with manipulation of the call itself. It would seem to me this would be call for a Department of Justice investigation here as to how badly this has been dismantled on purpose and what the response has happened here. Is that something you think would be viable for the business community to ask for a federal investigation to see why things have gone this way and what can be done?
Well, Mike, I think that's the only way that'll work. The citizens won't get anything done. The only thing that may shake this intransigence, this hardness of heart, is the business community, who does understand, you know what, our money's imperiled, because in the end result, what I see, and I qualify it, this is what I see. There are those in Dallas, a handful of people that are going to benefit financially, mightily so, at the expense of the business community in general and the citizens of the city of Dallas. Here recently, we've taken the driving to the 7-Elevens and the Walgreens and signing in. Fathom that for a moment. We sign in as beat cops, providing for-profit businesses a police presence. And then the argument's made that by doing that, we're reducing crime, and have done so. For whom? To what extent? How do we qualify this? Because these are the pronouncements coming out of the Public Information Office. These policies are working. For whom? For 7-Eleven? Should I, during the course of my daily shift, should I tell citizens, go hang out at the 7-Eleven? It's the safest place to be. The question in my mind's eye is, how is it that a multi-billion-dollar business, 7-Eleven, is receiving free police security when the citizens aren't getting any timely police response? How do you rationalize that and speak to that? The only way you can do that is, quite frankly, to be very disingenuous with your public. It's been said, when a man has nothing specific that he can really speak to, he speaks in general terms. And that's what we're seeing here. Oh, we're seeing great crime reduction. Let's be very specific in what we're talking to. And then, as we speak with great specificity, we find that there's no crime reduction at all.
Do these locations change, or are they fixed all the time right now?
To my understanding, it's every 7-Eleven in the city of Dallas receiving this free security.
Extra service.
It's an extra service that comes at the expense of the citizens at large.
Can a citizen in a high crime area call and say that they would like a clipboard put up at their front porch so they can get extra response in their high crime neighborhood?
Well, that's an interesting question. You know, Mike, they certainly could, but we know they wouldn't receive a clipboard. And we know that they would not receive any type of police response that's predetermined every so many hours or once or twice a day. That's not going to happen. You know, I would say to any citizens watch group, you want to vet what's happening with the department right now, and you want to see with what limited manpower we do have, how is it allocated? Because we can build an argument that this 7-Eleven initiative works, but it works for whom? Don't tell me that some guy that's looking to come to my home to burglarize my home or to have some gang activity behind my home is going to frequent to 7-Eleven first. And so that keeping a police presence there is very, very copacetic and a really good thing to do for crime in general. That's so disingenuous. All it's doing is providing security for free to a multi-billion-dollar industry. You know, let me make a point, because when I speak, I don't speak for dramatic effect. I'm not running for office or anything. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals has affirmed my right to speak as I do. I speak in the interest of the public. I'm not here to say they've done me wrong. They've made my job hard. No, not at all. I'm very well adjusted. I don't mind being here still. But the fact of the matter, I have a legal right to speak in the public interest, and that's why I'm here. I don't see myself as doing anything other than speaking to the truth. And for me, the truth is far greater than any one man. I mean, I'm a 64-year-old guy. I love and fear the Lord. I know what He's done in my life. I go to prison ministry and I talk to men that are doing 15, 20 years for a usable amount of narcotics. I talk to veterans who've served honorably, risked so much for the country. They come back with medical needs. And as soon as they medicate using medicinal cannabis, they're criminalized. I wouldn't emphasize the fact that I could lose my job or maybe something worse could happen to me. What I would emphasize is shame on you, those of you in the profession who know the truth and refuse to speak. Because if you're a believer, your biblical mandate is to speak truth into your culture, and you've chosen not to because you value and esteem your singular life more than you value and esteem those you live with and those you've sworn to protect. And so for me, it's a privilege to sit here. I don't have anything I'm risking that I don't gladly risk speaking these words. I'm not in Afghanistan, Russia, China, Indonesia, where I could be put to death for speaking. Not yet, anyway. So this is not a big thing to come here and speak the truth. It's really crazy when people say, well, you've got moxie to speak the truth? Really? It takes moxie to speak the truth? That's sad if we can really say that statement and believe that.